Hi, everybody. Welcome to LGBTQIA2S++ Literacy. We're going to be exploring rainbow identities, gender versus sexuality, a little bit about language, and also some things we can do as allies. My name is Angel. I use they, them pronouns. I'm femme presenting, so I will accept she. My labels under the umbrella would be queer, pansexual, and femme. I am white, I am able-bodied, cis and het presenting, and so everything that I understand about the world is, of course, going to be filtered through that perspective and how I've intersected in that balance of privilege and marginalization. So get your information from lots of sources, preferably from folks with lived experience. Today I'm presenting from Treaty 6 territory, which is home to many diverse Indigenous and Métis cultures, and also a traditional travel route for the same. I'm just learning myself about how pervasively colonialization has impacted many of the original cultures that are part of this country. And I really invite you to do the same. I think until we really understand the impact and the lived experiences of the people who were caretakers of this land forever, we're not going to get to a place where reconciliation is a real thing and not just a word that we're saying. On that note, want to set a safe space. So part of this workshop, you do have access to the forums, and I please do participate and have a good time there. For everyone's comfort and for safety and just to be true to the values that we hold here at Aspect, we do not permit the use of language that is attacking, belittling, anything like that. If you do make a mistake and use a turn of phrase or language that is problematic, one of our moderators will let you know. They'll be like, hey, we don't say or do that here because, and the reason they're doing that is because they're making an assumption that you meant no harm. So if you can take that information from that perspective, that the person knows that you didn't mean any harm, that's why you're not removed from the forum, right? That's why they're trusting you to accept being called in and give this information, because we just assume you want to do better. And to do that, you need the information. We also like to be called in. So if any turns of phrases or things that we're saying are problematic, we'd love to hear about it so that we also can learn and grow. For people who are being aggressive and using violent, obvious slur type language or anything like that, we'll just remove you from the forum and you won't be allowed. Nobody from your address will be allowed to access it, and we'll do that as many times as needed. We want it to be a safe place for honest, supportive discourse on how we can create safety and acceptance in our communities for people under the rainbow umbrella. So we'll start there for everybody under the rainbow umbrella. Before we dive into what each of those labels means, just want to point out that these labels indicate that somebody just isn't conforming to whatever the social norms is. And that's why those letters change and grow all the time. And so when we're looking at what is normal in society right now, it's heterosexual and cisgender are the norms, and anything that isn't heterosexual, seeming or cisgender leaning is considered other in society. And that's when we see that other and the norm, that's why anyone in under the other becomes part of the marginalized community, because they're considered outside of the social norms. Sexuality is a really pervasive part of who we are. We don't choose who we're attracted to. We can choose to pretend and to try to conform to the norms at the expense of our self-esteem, our mental health, our happiness, and our sense of belonging. And it even impacts how we experience intimacy. So our sense of intimacy and being cared for would be impacted there. The first that we're going to look at is Two-Spirit. I'm not Two-Spirit, so we're going to listen to folks who are Two-Spirit tell us all about it. I do recommend you check their website out. It's pretty, they've had a lot of really interesting things that you can learn about on their website. It's pretty nifty. So for folks who are participating in the forum, now's a really good time to go and explore that first forum, where we're asking, can white people be Two-Spirit? How can you find out what a gender, someone who's two-spirit, what gender they were born as? And is it okay to ask two-spirit people for more information on being two-spirit? And so we have some information here that you will be able to click on in the links below. And they're listed in the forum as well, so that you can explore a little bit more about being two-spirit and kind of why things have ebbed and flowed when it comes to acknowledging that being two-spirit exists. That's the thing. Intersex is when somebody doesn't fit that binary for male or female when we're talking about what sex is. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but we're talking about sex, not gender or sexuality. So just the physical characteristics of sex, which it can include chromosomes, hormones, that kind of thing. Again, as far as I know, I'm not intersex, so we're going to listen to people who are talk about their experience. And of course, now you might want to go to discussion 2 and take a look at the resources that are there before you head on in to answer some questions, and explore some of the responses that other people have put in as well. Okay, so when we look at the discussions, here's some of the resources that are there, and the questions will be, how prevalent is intersex? Can intersex people have babies? How can we ask about genitals? What does this mean for gender expectations? And why is isolation an issue? And as you can see, there's a couple of resource links here that will also be there for you to explore. And that's under discussion 2. You don't have to answer all the questions. You can answer just one or all if you want to. Totally fine. And then transgender is the origins of the word comes from the word trans from Latin, which means like a person who's not the gender that correlates to one's assigned birth. Because Latin, it means across from. So it'd be across from birth. Because Latin, it means across from. So it'd be across from the gender, which can make it sound like it's still a binary. But as you'll see with folks sharing their experiences, not necessarily so. And again, there is a forum. So if you click to the module that says discussions, you can go in there and participate in the discussions. And that is, why does it feel uncomfortable to be labeled as cisgender? And there's a couple other questions in there also for food for thought. All right. So there's also genderqueer, agender, non-gender, non-binary, which they talked about a little bit in that video. What I want to point out is that not everybody is going to transition from one binary to another, and some are. So some people are really comfortable with that binary, some are not. Some people will present as masculine or feminine, but it doesn't mean that they identify as male or female or that they're using masculine and feminine pronouns, and some are. So the only way to know is to actually have those conversations. Yeah, and then gender fluid people tend to move around a little bit. So some days they're feeling more feminine and they identify as a girl. Some days they identify as a boy. Some days they're just not feeling it. Some days they're all over the place with it. They're identifying as both. And so that is, it is not a test where you're supposed to guess the pronoun. You just ask, right? What pronouns are you using today? Okay, so here's some common rainbow terms. Gay is just someone who's attracted to the same sex. It's typically used for men who are attracted to men, but it can also be used as a blanket term for people in the gay community who aren't straight. A lesbian is a person who is a woman and attracted to other women. Trans women are women, trans men are men. Just want to put that in there. A bisexual person is someone who's attracted to more than one gender, whereas pansexual, it's not about the gender, it's about something else that draws them to the person. They like people. They like the people-y things. And then queer questioning is someone who might not be straight. They might, and it's only used by that person, right? So we don't walk around calling other people queers. That's a word that if someone's using for themselves, then you can use that when describing them, but not if they haven't used it for themselves or aren't still using it for themselves. And questioning is just when someone isn't sure. They're exploring. They're figuring things out. And although typically we assume that that's for teenagers, man, through the pandemic, we certainly saw a lot of people in the 35 to 70 age range who were suddenly in a position where they'd had time to just be a human being instead of being focused on their work week and then recovering from their work week, who were questioning and coming to terms with their gender and their sexuality. Which takes us to the A for asexual. Excellent. Okay, so there is a forum for Q&As, remember, so we could go and check that out as well. Demisexual is part of the asexual umbrella, but it's a completely different category. So we're going to explore their discussion on that. All right, so that's a little bit about being demi. I always get stuck on, is it different from pan? Because there's so much overlap there, but it is different. So section 2, we're going to talk about gender versus sexuality. And I just want to reiterate that sexes are physical characteristics. Our gonads, our genitals, and our reproductive bits, our chromosomes, and our hormones. Sexuality is who you're attracted to or not attracted to. And gender is the degree of feminine and masculine traits that we are assumed to have based on either our sex or our own perception of self. It is really subjective. And in our society, it's pretty rigid in those expectations. And so we need to recognize that gender is the imaginary piece that comes with the culture. And not all cultures look at those things the same way. In some cultures, like we'd seen in the Two-Spirit video, have a totally different way at looking at gender. And one of my favorite exercises, and this is in your workshop, you can see genderbread exercise. So you can click on that after and go take a look. But is this lovely genderbread person. And you will notice that each of these sliding scales that are underneath there aren't an on-off switch, right? So you could be like, for gender identity, for example, I would say I'm a little over half for womanness and maybe like at a quarter for masculine stuff. Whereas my gender expression is definitely 3/4 feminine. I don't wear makeup and jewelry and stuff, but I'm still here. And then anatomical sex is the actual bits that you have. So your chromosomes, your reproductive system, your actual genitals, your all the things that make up sex, and to what degree that would be femaleness or maleness. And what we're seeing even more now as people are living longer and getting more medical imaging done and that kind of thing, and more hormone studies are being done, is there's a lot more intersex people than originally was believed. We know it's at least as common as redheads in North America, and we think that number is actually going up. And then there's your sex that you're assigned at birth, right? Did they take a glance and say you're intersex? Did they say you're male? Did they say you're female? And so that's your sex assigned at birth. And some people are calling it the sex designated at birth. So designated sex at birth, or assigned sex at birth. So just keep that in mind. And then identity, the way we view ourselves is from our brain, right? So it's our perception, and that's like where we live, right? It's our feelings about it. So when somebody is like talking about what it is to be a woman or a man, like do we resonate with that? Does that fit for us? That would be our identity, the way we view ourselves and what fits and feels comfortable for ourselves. Whereas our expression, of course, are the things that we do on the outside. So do we wear makeup? Do we wear dresses? And of course, those are culturally linked, and also historically, things change over time as well. But right now, dresses in North America are considered a feminine thing. So if you wear dresses, then your expression is slightly feminine. And even with the sexuality, you can see the slider there, right? It's like it's like women attracted to other feminine or attracted to other female people, and men attracted to other masculine or attracted to other male people. And then romantically attracted being a different thing, as we saw in the sexual video. Like when you think about who would be fun to have sex with and who you are, crushing on or romantically attracted to, they might not be the same gender. But the same thing, it's a sliding scale. So it's not necessarily that you have to, check a box, right? It's like to what degree. And over time, our experiences can shift that spectrum line a little bit as people get more comfortable with themselves, their gender expression, their gender identity and stuff change, as well as who they're attracted to. And if you start taking hormones and stuff, then your anatomical sex actually starts to change. If you do any sort of reassignment surgeries, your anatomical sex will change. And so that spectrum, again, that slider can shift and move around. So now's a really good time to go and do the gender exercise for yourself and make your own genderbread person. There's a cool little worksheet that you can check out, and it's a lot of fun. It can be a really cool learning exercise. It's also a really good conversation starter with people who just don't get it. Fun activity with teenagers to sit down and like share with your kids, like, hey, look what I found out about how I look at gender or how I express gender. Okay, so language is our next unit. Inclusive language is something that doesn't other someone, it doesn't make them feel like they're outside of the norm. And so that's really important to consider when we're talking about language that we're using. For example, we might say, hey, folk, hi, people, look at all you beautiful humans, things like that, instead of guys and girls. Oops, sorry about that. And it's also a lot of that language that we use is very gendered, and it's based on gender stereotypes, right? And so when we use some of those terms, it can really matter. And then on top of that, there's like slurs that we use, which please don't, but that are out there. Can you think of other words that are really important when we're talking about LGBTQIA besides the stereotypes, the inclusive language, and slurs? Okay, perfect. So some of the terms that we use that are really gendered, of course, because we live in a society that sees everything as like an on-off switch for male, female, is mother, father, wife, husband, girls, guys, boys, girls, ladies, gentlemen. And then we get into other terms like mankind, man-made, waitress, waiter, which now we're seeing server is a popular term. Policeman, policewoman, Mr., Ms., Miss, Mrs., all of those good things. And some examples of how to change those to gender neutral are like parent, partner, everyone, folk, manufactured, rather than man-made, humankind, server, police officer, and then the MX, which anybody can use as their prefix instead of Mr., Miss, Ms., and all of that. And there's a whole list online. Like you can find huge lists of gender neutral terms to use. My favorite so far is nibbling for niece or nephew. And I just thought that was, I thought it was pretty cool. When we use pronouns in place of a name to indicate who we were talking about, often, it's really easy to do if we're using the binary, right? Did you see her? Can you give this to him? I had a lot of people who don't understand why we're using pronouns. So I just want you to consider that if you were to like suddenly disappear off of the participant list today, and I noticed that you were gone, would you want me to go, oh, so-and-so just disappeared from the room. I wonder if she's coming back. I wonder if he's coming back. I wonder if they're coming back. And like, whatever feels right for you out of like that whole list of pronouns is your pronouns. And that's just how that is. I also, and here's like just a little list of some of the more popular pronoun combinations. There's lots more, of course. I really wish people would stop arguing about the they, them as being a singular, because when you're not sure what the gender is of somebody, you do use they automatically. Like, just bear with me, but like if you were to walk up to like a park bench and see a jacket there, or car keys, or if you find a cell phone, you don't know who wore that jacket, who's driving the car. You know it's only one person. It's only one person's keys. It's one person's backpack. It's one person's phone. But you're like, wow, someone left their, whatever it is here. I wonder if they're coming back for it. I'm going to put it up on this bench so they can see it if they do come back. I'm going to turn to lost and found so they can find it. Right? So we do use they in the singular all the time. If you're interested in learning more about pronouns, we have 2 courses that might really interest you. One is Gender for Adults, and the other is Pronouns and Neutral Language for Professionals. And it goes way in depth into this topic. But these are our basic pronouns. And the way we find out what pronouns someone's using is we say, hi, my name's Angel. You say them pronouns. And then that invites them to use the same, right? Or you can just ask, what are your pronouns? We just don't want to only be asking people that look different to us because you're just othering them, right? Which is why introducing yourself with your pronouns is one of the better ways, which we're going to talk about in allyship anyways. Allyship. So allyship is an action. It's not a word. So when people say to me, oh, I'm an ally, I wish they would say, I'm trying to demonstrate allyship, or I want to be supportive, instead of labeling themselves as an ally, because you don't just think it's okay for gay people to marry. It takes more than that. And there's lots of people that theoretically support the queer community, but they don't really speak up in the face of anti-queer sentiment. That's not allyship. Okay. And in fact, that kind of silence actually supports violence against queer people. Some of the activities for allyship are to make sure that you're educating yourself, which congratulations, you're doing right now, to validate and support people when they talk about their experiences, even if it's just so far away from yours that you have troubles understanding and believing that this is real shit that happens to real people. Being honest, right? That's never happened to me. That's terrible. That should never happen to you. That's homophobic. Like, oh my God, you know what I mean? How terrible. What can I do to help? What can I do to help prevent that from happening in the future? Right? Who do I talk to? Who should I write my letter to? Like, go get out there and do the things. And to proactively work towards inclusivity. So not wait until someone says to you, here's a problem, but to be actively looking for ways in your community that you can promote that inclusivity. And that might be showing up for a city meeting where they're talking about resources, or writing a letter to the Minister of Education, or like what have you, like proactively looking for those things. And this next one's really hard for a lot of people, particularly for us white folk who are so used to not being uncomfortable in society. We have to learn how to be okay feeling uncomfortable. And this is true for like learning about racism too. We have to be able to, for a moment, you know what I mean, feel that discomfort of like, oh my God, like people are thinking badly of me because of what I said or did, or oh, I'm not racist, I'm not homophobic, and instead be able to go, wow, like I feel really defensive, like where's that coming from? And I know that for folks that enjoy a lot of the things in society that protect you from being marginalized, like white skin color, being heterosexual, being cisgender, being able-bodied, like all of these things, that we don't have a lot of practice with that discomfort. And so we need to learn to be uncomfortable if we're going to take in information that is so far away from our own experiences and build our allyship. And we have more information about that if you're interested in the Power and Privilege workshop, as well as the Social Justice 101, which are free. And be really honest that you're learning. Don't use that as a reason for doing what you did. It doesn't excuse you. But like if you're new to a community, go in like, look, I'm learning and I'm open to being called in, but I am still learning, and I'm doing the things to make sure that I'm not a dangerous person for you to be around. And so you know, I hope you can have some compassion with me as I learn and grow, but then continue to do the work, right? Like you can't just go, I'm learning, teach me. You need to go and do the work. There's a toolkit here in the resources that you can click on that has a lot of really cool stuff that can help you build your allyship skills. And yeah, just a little tidbit here. I don't know why it runs off of that little box. I'm going to see if I can fix it right now, actually, because I've got the original open over here. Just going to try and make that bigger. Do you know that trans youth are 300 times more likely than their cis peers, not their pairs, to struggle with anxiety, depression, and suicide? And here in Edmonton, they also represent just over half of our homeless youth or unhoused youth. And so we need to erase from our vocabulary things like it's a phase or it's not safe to be when we're talking to kids that come out to us. They know it's not safe. They live in society where it's very clear that it's not safe. All right, I'm going to turn you loose on the rest of the assignments. So when you're going through the course, I'm just going to pull it up here so I know for sure. The learning materials, this video and stuff where you saw that, the next folder down is each folder has a discussion. And then there's a little quiz you can do. And then there is an evaluation. That feedback is so valuable to us, lets us know what we can do to fix things up. A link to the question and answer forum, and then of course the genderbread assignment and resource folder. So make sure you explore all of that, have fun, and you can always hit me up at angel@aspect.ca if you have questions that you don't want to post on the forum. And thank you for coming out and building your allyship. Hopefully I'll see you at the next workshop.